This video and all other videos on this channel for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and the markets at the moment, the technical setup, are really pushing the limits at the moment of what is technically acceptable. It's making it quite difficult to say anything with certainty at the moment, and sometimes markets are just like that, okay? Now, what I have found over the years of doing this is to simply remain calm, take it one day at a time. We don't need to see a single wick or a single level violated for a single daily candle and then start dumping the whole stack and calling tops and making any serious decisions and setting them in stone. We can be a bit fluid from time to time, and often it's better to do that. So when we get to the charts at the end, I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you where, yes, technically we've got some daily cycle failures, but no, I can't really draw any invalidations. The dollar as well is very interesting, so we'll show you that. So far, although there's a bunch of swinging sentiment on all of this kind of thing around Bitcoin, we are holding the levels, okay? The positions, the two that we took so far, we've got about half the exposure I wanted in the member section. So far, both of those positions are still in play. So again, can't really say there's anything wrong at this moment in time, at least not until we're stopped out. And if we're not stopped out, then we remain cautiously optimistic and trust the cycles. For the stock market, again, we are really pushing the limits of what is technically acceptable. But at the same time, it won't take much. It would just take a couple more green upside days to confirm new cycle lows. And then similarly to Bitcoin, we put the trust in the cycles, we trade the system, and until proven otherwise or until stopped out, then we remain cautiously optimistic. This is your final opportunity to grab a 30% discount off of the Slice mentorship program, and the 30% applies to whatever commitment period you choose. So if you choose 1 month, you get 30% off 1 month. If you choose a 6-month commitment, you get 30% off a 6-month commitment. And if you choose a 12-month commitment, you will get 30% off the entire year. So today is the final day to claim this discount. The pendulum, once more, has swung from git to goat. Okay, I'm back to being the goat since Bitcoin is currently back in the green. I asked you guys to generate me some images of the git goat pendulum, and I thought that some of these were really good. So it is funny that just how in all of life we get this pendulum swing from side to side. The same is true of influencers. If you get something right, as I was saying the other day, you're the goat. You get something wrong, and suddenly you're quite the git. Thank you to everyone that generated me one of these. Some of these are really good. I couldn't actually choose my favorite one, but I appreciate everyone that put in some time and energy into generating me a git goat pendulum. So thanks again if you spun up one of these images. And of course, we can remain on the goat side so long as these cycle lows hold. But of course, get stopped out, cycle failure, and we will swing rapidly back the other way. Finally, before we actually get into some alpha today, I need to point to this because I seem to have confused even more people talking about this indicator members area and the trader tools and the cycle hub and all of this kind of thing. This is not yet available. I know lots of people want the indicator, lots of people want access to the members area. It's not yet ready. It will be released in the not too distant future. We're probably in the final 2 weeks, I would hope, phase now, where we're just making sure we don't launch it and then everyone has a bad time with it or bad experience or they can't log in and out properly or anything like that. And we want to make sure that the launch is successful. We don't want to have a bunch of problems and a bunch of unhappy customers. So stick with it. It will soon be ready. It's just the website is in the final testing phases right now, but it does seem very much like we're on track for a couple of weeks and then this thing will be ready. So stay tuned for that. I said yesterday, what is this? Reach 100k more users. No thanks. I definitely don't want 100k. No. Turnaround Tuesday, right? I said this would be super bullish and we'd love to see a green close today, and you'll see why this is important when we get to the charts. Of course, we managed to get that. Now we just need to see some follow through. And of course, we've got this big narrative in the background that the market can happily cling on to. I believe they're talking on the 7th of March at some kind of crypto summit, and potentially we are going to see the announcement of a legitimate crypto strategic reserve. And that's right, crypto, not just Bitcoin. We're also talking about Ethereum and XRP, Solana, ADA also being named in this post from DT. And I can see the knee-jerk reaction amongst the Bitcoin maxis. A lot of people think I'm a maxi, but I'm actually not. This is a real maxi reaction right here. Only Bitcoin belongs in the strategic reserve. And whilst I kind of agree with this, yes, it's true, I think, it's my opinion, that from a sound money standpoint, we only really would need Bitcoin in the strategic reserve. I also think it's true, only having Bitcoin would actually be better for humanity. But remember, there's a good reason these New World Order coins are also included in the strategic reserve. And that's because CBDCs are coming. In one form or another, that's been the plan all along. And I know a lot of people's new god figure, new father figure, new pseudo-father figure, DT, has promised you that CBDCs aren't coming. But at the same time as this man said, there will be no CBDC, he has just demonstrated to the world, he just put it on front and center for everyone to see, that nothing about this strategic reserve is in the interest of humanity nor sound money. We're being fed this narrative that no CBDCs are coming because your new hero promised you it, right? While simultaneously they're adding the bridges for said CBDC and the networks they will run on into the strategic reserve. Some of these altcoins as well that are going to be included in this basket are specifically designed for digital IDs and social credit scores, right? XRP is probably going to be one of these big bridge currency things that bridges all of the assets between each other. Ethereum, they're going to run some of the CBDCs on and probably some of the stable coins on. ADA, everyone knows for years, is social credit scores for kids, okay? If you just don't know about that, then you didn't do sufficient research on what you hold, and you can just type that in, ADA or Cardano social credit scores for kids, and watch that on YouTube. There's plenty of people that have covered it in detail. They're probably going to add HBAR and a couple of other ISO coins into here as well, which are specifically designed for digital IDs. So inside of this basket for the strategic reserve, we've got Bitcoin, yes, which is great, but we've also got the rails on which we can build CBDCs and stable coins that, although they don't identify as CBDCs, are essentially the same thing. We're also adding the bridge for all these CBDCs and liquidity portals and all of this kind of thing, and we're adding the social credit scores and the digital ID system, all inside of a strategic reserve. So this whole thing, again, just stinks to me of a rat in the system. It stinks to me of saying one thing and doing another. If your new hero, right, your new savior, DT, had your best interest at heart and really wanted to fix the problem, do you really think he'd be adding a basket of these currencies? And again, do not be lazy and call me a maxi here, because it's not about being a maxi. I won't say much, but if you know, you know, right? And I know a lot of you do know exactly what I'm talking about here when I say I'm not a maxi and hold my cursor right here. But the absolute reality is you are being intellectually dishonest if you believe these sorts of currencies or cryptos, whatever you want to call them, are in the interest of humanity, right? We just have to be honest. It doesn't mean you can't hold them. It doesn't mean they're probably not going to pump. It doesn't mean that we don't want more fiat and to be a part of what is essentially inevitable from some people's perspective. It's not a judgment call if you hold these kind of things and you're making gains on them, right? We're all here to make gains. That's fine. But again, I've been saying this for a while and people often push back, you know, they're like, oh, you've got it wrong about this guy, you've got it wrong about Elon and blah, blah, blah. And maybe I have. I'm just far too paranoid. And I think if we start to look, they've made their intentions very clear here, right? This is really not about Bitcoin. This is really not about strategic Bitcoin reserve. This is about the same thing it's been about since before the C19 era, which was increasing totalitarian control, decreasing privacy and freedom, and doing it all in the name of protecting us and saving the world and making things great again. I know a lot of you are going to flame me for this, and a lot of people get really upset when I badmouth your new god or your new pseudo-father figure. But I mean, how else do you justify this? This guy is pumping and dumping meme coins. This whole thing serves as a pump and dump. His son's like, buy Bitcoin, you're welcome. And then loads of people get wrecked. Okay, granted they get wrecked because they don't know how to manage risk. They're putting too much leverage on. They're FOMO buying the top with no strategy. I understand that, right? But is it responsible for these kind of people in these kind of positions to be pumping and dumping and naming individual cryptos? I don't think it is necessarily, but the pony show must go on. And in either case, it seems like regardless of the price action, you know, Bitcoin, ETH, XRP, Sol, ADA, if they're all going into a strategic reserve basket, if there is any element of truth to this at all, and it seems that there is, then perhaps they've just signaled to the world which ones the chosen ones really are. But again, I still caution people against thinking that the future is bright for everyone when they are quite clearly building a strategic reserve that is going to have far more tyranny and control than the current system, which already is very tyrannical, unfair, and corrupt. So like it or lump it, okay, we are turbocharging our way to handing this industry over to the very people we were trying to separate money from, which I think there's a beautiful and poetic irony there somehow. One thing that is extremely bullish for me short term, okay, is the market throwing a tantrum, having a correction, and teasing on true technical damage and breakdowns has immediately allowed 3 rate cuts to be priced in by the end of this year. If we grab hold of the tell that to the bond market squiggle with a 10-year yield, seems that we are well on our way to telling that to the bond market. For those of you that don't know, it is the bond market that is in control of the rate cuts. It is not Trump, it is not Powell, it's not anyone, okay? It's the bond market in aggregate that determines when the rate cuts are executed. And so far, we are now gradually, slowly but surely, 1% a day-ish, starting to increase the probability that we move from the right-hand side, which is paused, towards cuts. Now, we may not see a cut in March. I'm still in the camp of people that thinks we're overly restrictive for one simple reason. This is the trueflation curve. To say that the Fed, currently with its paused interest rate and where they are at the level they're at, right, 425 to 450, to say that that's not overly restrictive when trueflation is plummeting at the hard right edge. Okay, all of the trolls that were in here, okay, wiped out in about 6 weeks, okay, entirely disproven. in 6 weeks. That's all it took. Illustrating once again, this was nothing more than a counter trend rally inside of the primary downtrend. And again, all of this is because the Fed is overly restrictive. Now look at the hard right edge. Let me get my magnifying glass. Look at this. Is this not down, sideways, and down? And yet currently we're 93% probable that we're going to be remaining paused at the March meeting in just a couple of weeks. I mean, this is absolutely crazy. And this is why I'm pretty sure that we are going to continue to see the yields come off strongly, okay? Because the yields coming off strongly will put pressure on the Fed to cut. And remember, it is the bond market in aggregate that is in charge of cutting rates. It is not these puppet masters they put on stage. You can hear my angry tone today, can't you? I have this real disdain for these people in power for some reason. I woke up and chose violence today. I'm going to try and take a deep breath, right? And focus on what's important to me at least, and I think to you guys, and that is the charts. Now notice, as I said earlier, the technical levels are being pushed now, okay? So when I pull up this Dixie chart, we were thinking this is probably a daily and a weekly cycle low. It looked like it confirmed, and it's immediately reversed. So I was thinking 1, 2, 3 right trans, 4 left translates and fails, perfect weekly cycle, textbook. But it may well be, we're going to need a 5th daily cycle. So it may well end up looking like 1 right trans, 2 right trans, 3, 4 left trans, 5 left trans, and then we get that weekly cycle on the next daily cycle. It could also be that we just failed on day 3 and are now going to roll over. That wouldn't be uncommon in a bearish daily cycle, with our next one due somewhere around early April, right? The 1st or the 2nd of April. That would not be uncommon, except if this really is a weekly cycle low here, it would be extremely uncommon to get a day 3 left translated weekly cycle low failure, which makes me think we have yet to find the weekly cycle low. Remember, straight from that PDF, as I said, we go 1, 2, 3 right trans and a 4th in a bullish cycle, and in a bearish cycle we go 1 right trans and then 1, 2, 3 left trans and failures if the cycle is bearish. So that tells us we should at least see daily cycle 1, if this was the real weekly cycle low, right translate before then we get the left translations and fails to give us that next weekly cycle low. So because we haven't got that, because we have failed as early as day 3 in this current daily cycle, it kind of says to me we didn't find the weekly cycle low yet. Now this could be super duper bullish, at least in the short term. If that really was a highly unusual day 3 weekly cycle failure, then I've been saying it over and over and over again, nobody wants to see this more than me, okay? But it just doesn't really fit from that weekly cycle perspective. It seems more likely that we've yet to find the weekly cycle, and therefore we're probably going to see something more akin to this in the short to medium term. But the good news is, notice how for weeks, months even, we were following this insane yellow squiggle. And now, for the first time, we've started to deviate away from it, which again sets us up for more risk-on moments in Bitcoin, in the metals, even though the metals aren't traditionally risk-on, and of course the stock market in the not too distant future. So we are setting ourselves up here for quite a nice final push to the upside. But when I said about pushing the limits of what's technically acceptable, as I said, that would be lovely for a weekly cycle and a fail on day 3. But technically speaking, that's not really how it works. It would be extremely rare to fail a weekly cycle as early as day 3. Normally we'd get at least 2 to 3 weeks, and we'd fail left translated on week 2 to 3. Normally that would be considered extremely bearish. So to fail before week 1 is even completed seems extremely unlikely to me, and thus I still think we probably got to move this weekly cycle to here. So that's the first thing. We are pushing the limits of what is technically allowed in terms of the weekly cycle for the Dixie. So interesting times, and we'll reset this to here. For gold and silver, I don't quite think we've reset the cycle just yet. Now, if we push up from here, then I'm wrong about this, and this can be a tradable long with a stop below the low as always. But I think I've seen enough of these to know what happens. I think we still haven't yet to see the second drive, and if we do get a rejection today and tomorrow, then I will continue to target one final lower low to give us that 2 drives as per my yellow squiggle, probably look more like this. And then from there, again, we'll get long on a swing and a breakout once the thing is confirmed. Silver, on the other hand, is kind of contradicting this. And so I think this is probably going to be an add and a move stops up from me. I will deal with this again in the level 3 members section. If this low is not yet in, then this thing really needs to roll over immediately. Otherwise, again, we are pushing the limits of what's acceptable. So I think on a balance of probabilities, silver has probably confirmed itself a new cycle low, and thus we could probably get long in here and start to target new highs. Just need a little bit more confirmation from gold, and I think it will be time to go. For the stock market, we continue to push the limits again, even further this time, of what is technically acceptable. That undeniably is a daily cycle failure, and it's right around the weekly cycle failure level as well. But of course, there's still 3 more days left in this week. There's still 3 more trading sessions, and all we will have to do is close a handful of points, let's say 5 or 10 points higher than where we are, and technically, on a closing basis, we won't have a failed cycle. Now, a failed cycle here would imply extreme bearishness to come. It would imply a total trend change. It would imply that we're going to spend the rest of this 6-month ish weekly cycle in a downtrend. Not good. Okay, but again, we're pushing the limits of what's technically acceptable here, because so long as the weekly candle closes above this low, then it's not a true weekly cycle failure. Also, we're in the timing window now to start to expect a daily cycle low reversal. Just a couple more sessions and we'd be right around there, which means on a balance of probabilities, if we can just do something akin to this, okay, then there's actually a thesis to be long here rather than short, because the cycle will have bottomed. And again, if we can hold above here, then technically speaking, although we're pushed right up against the limit for where we have to call it, we won't have a true weekly cycle failure. So right now, I consider this to be hanging on by the skin of our teeth. But again, it's important not to just puke your entire stack here, because objectively speaking, the cycle is bottom in the daily cycle. And if we don't close a weekly candle below here, then there's no technical damage just yet. And we would be hopefully looking for further upside. Note that sentiment is extremely bearish here. And note that many of the highly experienced traders are on guard here, because whether it's a cycle system or something else, many of the experienced traders know that this is exactly what a trend reversal starts to look like. Now, it's not confirmed yet, but it wouldn't take much. It would only take a left translated and failed daily cycle here, and that's it. I'm not one for moving averages myself, but I also happen to know the 200 moving average sits right around this level that we've stopped at. So if we are going to bounce here, buyers really need to step in immediately. Once again, it speaks to really pushing the limits of what is technically acceptable here. And for Bitcoin, honestly, if we exclude this bit, and I'm not one for actually excluding it, I'm just doing this for the sake of argument, exclude this. And this to me looks like a textbook daily and weekly cycle low. Okay, it's only this weird pump and dump thing on that Trump tweet that makes this thing look a bit jank. But the reality is, I was talking about this, right? Daily and cycle low, we were setting it up. I had my yellow squiggle, where is it? There. Yeah, sure, we went a little bit lower than I was expecting, but really this was a perfect cycle to the tick. I was also talking about how it's extremely common to get moving average breakdowns, to get trend line breaks, bear traps, all of that kind of thing, and that's exactly what we got. And now we're starting to just about recover that. Okay, so I actually remain cautiously optimistic here. Where's my long position? The long position is still there. You can see the stop loss is still public and available. Okay, so far so good. All we need to see now is this thing move up and get a breakout. And there's even going to be an opportunity for people that didn't play this out of fear for whatever reason to add here and put a stop somewhere in this neighborhood. And again, the target's much higher. I've also been adding exposure to this move in Coinbase, and I'm going to continue to add in the level 3 members section. Again, you can see we're almost taken out on this trade, but so far so good. Okay, particularly if we can push from here, then I think it should be party time. Again, we're pushing the limits of what's technically acceptable here, because any kind of upside move in a breakout, okay, and then we have to, or at least I do, draw a line underneath this 78k wick and use that as bull market invalidation. I can't possibly continue to hodl the core allocation and the cold stored Bitcoin if we trade back below here, because that will be a failed weekly cycle. And again, we'll have very sinister implications. So right now we're kind of pushing the limits again of what is technically acceptable. But as ever, we'll just continue to trade the system. That's what the system is for, is to keep me from using my emotions and panic selling and jeeting my bags at the low, right? We just have a system and we stick to the system. The system's been working very well. There's no reason to doubt it at this moment in time. And again, remember that pendulum, whether it's git goat or bullish, bearish, or fear and greed, whatever you want to express it as, it doesn't take much. And when I say that, all I mean is it will just take one or two big green candles here, and that pendulum will be swung all the way back to FOMO, strategic reserve, 300, 400, 500k targets will be the norm. And the pain trade here is that lots and lots of people will have panic sold the lows right there. So cycles are doing cycle things. Take this thing one day at a time, no emotion, no bias, and we will see what the market can give. I'm your boy Camel. I hope you're doing well. Until next time, cheers, bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see. Rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame. Sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel Finance got the markets key. Taking us normies on a bump.